RWBY, Volume 5, Episode 12, Vault of the Spring Maiden. What happens? The episode begins with Jean rushing to Weiss. Oscar notices RWBY on the floor and gets upset, hitting Leo down the stairs. Leo tells Hazel Oscar is Ozpin, prompting Hazel to lose his shit. RWBY begins to wake, Hazel tears his coat apart, and then sticks some dust into his arms. Crow protects Oscar off-screen while Cinder, Raven, and Vernal head down an elevator to the vault. Yang sits around for a bit until Nora tells her to do something, wherein she immediately gets kicked in the head. Emerald and Mercury decide to exclusively keep Yang at bay, while Jean tries to stop Weiss's bleeding. Cinder tells Leo that RWBY needs to stay alive as they continue their descent. Crow has apparently disappeared as Hazel is only dealing with Oscar now, as Oz tries to convince him to run. Ozpin tells Oscar Hazel's backstory, prompting Oscar to vaguely try to talk to Hazel, leading to Ozpin taking over his body. We then cut back to Jean, Ren, and Weiss, where Jean's semblance kicks in to heal her. Down in the elevator, the girls partake in some small talk until they reach the bottom. Back on the surface, Ozpin and Hazel duke it out, as Jean continues to heal Weiss. RWBY fully wakes up and ignores Yang struggling to instead watch all the teachers tussle. After instructing Ranger on what to do, she then decides to help her sister out, but we don't get to see that. Instead, we cut back to the vault, where it takes 2 minutes for Cinder to attack Vernal with her secret Grim arm. She's confused as to why she didn't get the maiden powers from Vernal until Raven reveals she's actually the maiden to end the episode. For being the big dramatic cliffhanger of the previous episode, Weiss's stabbing is weirdly pushed aside for this one. The episode starts with Jean running to her, and Cinder just lets him do that, but then we don't get back to it for another 3 minutes. Why? Why put so much emphasis on the whole will Weiss be okay dilemma just to put it aside? How was Oscar only just now noticing RWBY? Didn't he see the big flash of light earlier? This thing with Oscar's "Get up! We need you!" just feels like it should have been for Weiss. She got the setup last episode. She got stabbed. But instead, Oscar gets to fret over RWBY since she got a bump on her head? The audience has just waited a week to see if Weiss will be okay. Let us focus on the thing you built up.
You're letting that boy make a fool of you.
I know you're tired of loving with nobody to love.
Hazel is one good outfit change away from becoming my new husbando. Well, except for the whole Hulk thing. They set up Hazel really well. While the rest of the Council of Villains evil monologue and snark all the time, Hazel's the only one who speaks plainly. He speaks quietly. Tyrion laughing is a dull example of he's crazy, so you should be afraid of him. But Hazel's quiet demeanor makes you think. He's so quiet, he doesn't seem to want to do villainous stuff. He was upset that Adam killed Sienna needlessly. So why is he in the Council of Evil? Every other villain chews up the scenery, but Hazel has been soft-spoken and calm. He was accompanied by the sound of wind chimes. And you made him this. When he was quiet and slow and gentle, I was scared of him. He hangs out with Salem and friends, but he's nice enough to get Oscar a train ticket. So what has he done to land him with the villains? What will this gentle giant do once the kids inevitably face him? He just turns into the strong variant of all the other hammy villains. If he had stayed slow and quiet while enraged, then his indestructible nature would be way more intimidating. Not only does this feel less exciting, but it also makes him less interesting. An approachable, nice person who's also heinously evil in some way is infinitely more intriguing than quiet one who gets big and yells when mad. No, don't tear your coat apart! Your silhouette is completely different now! You don't have any other hazel greenish things on you! Even without the dust bulking him up, taking off his coat makes Hazel almost unrecognizable. He looks totally different like this. Oh shit, Crow's using his scythe? Psych! We don't see it in scythe mode again after this. They literally just had him deploy it as a transition. Scythes are cool. Let us see him use it more often. Hey, you know what's a good idea? Having Hazel bulk up and run at Oscar and then cutting to Cinder, Raven, and Vernal. Make sure you have the characters yelling a lot off screen so the audience knows there's action happening while they're stuck watching Cinder make plans. Yang, what are you doing? Her arms are up, implying she's in the middle of a fight, presumably versus Mercury, since he's the only one we've seen her share a screen with. But then she starts just casually looking around the room. Nora has to tell her what to do. Why? Why wouldn't she just run to help her little sister like how Oscar did? Why wouldn't she try to run after her mom? And what was Mercury doing during all this? Waiting just off screen for his cue? He and Emerald are nowhere to be seen when Yang looks around. Neither are Hazel, Crow, and Oscar for that matter, despite their constant off-screen combat noises. It's like the directors forget a character exists once the camera cuts away from them. If you can't keep track of so many characters during an encounter, don't include all of them. Why do Emerald and Mercury only target Yang? I mean, she's the only one who's not just sitting around on the floor, but why not divide and conquer? Emerald tussles with Yang while Mercury tries to keep Nora away from the special must-be-taken-alive RWBY. Mercury keeps Yang at bay until the elevator is down, then assists Emerald in attacking Jean and Ren so they can't heal Weiss. Sticking together just seems so inefficient when half the villain party are leaving the encounter. If Emerald and Mercury are busy with Yang, then Jean and the others can all fret about Weiss and be amazed at his semblance without interruption. Never mind keep the villains at bay with multiple characters involved in a fight. Ren and Nora aren't really doing anything right now. Have them join Yang rather than just sit next to their unconscious friends.
Ren, talk to me. This is bad.
Duh! What's the point of this interaction? Can Jean not tell this wound is serious? Were the writers afraid the audience wouldn't understand that Weiss is in danger? Why has Oscar developed the sudden habit of turning away to address Oz? All this does is make him look away from his assailant. I think we all tend to really latch on to how Ozpin stole control in this episode, but I think it's important to acknowledge how chivalrous he is about it beforehand. He keeps asking Oscar for permission to take the lead, but Oscar keeps refusing. Honestly, it frames Oscar as bullheaded, unwilling to accept that this challenge is above his skill ceiling, and it would be smarter for the veteran to take over. It's a neato concept that Oscar refuses to run like how RWBY does, and could be an interesting thing for them to focus on. But I sort of feel like he's only acting this way just as an excuse to show Ozpin can steal the reins if he wants. The fact that Hazel insists Oz explain his backstory makes me 100% certain it's not true. Whether Oz is lying or misinformed, the clunky way Oscar and Hazel talk about Gretchen, avoiding any specifics, makes it really feel like the two believe they're talking about different events. Or at least, I certainly hope so, because otherwise Hazel is not only uninteresting, but also hypocritical. My sister died as a child because she wanted to be a huntress, so now I hate Ozpin! Guess I'll slaughter Oscar and all these other kids now.
Please, let me fight. I know Hazel. He's wounded in a way that cannot be healed.
And what would that be? Despite their fight getting substantial screen time this episode, Ozpin never employs this incurable weakness strategy he mentions. Why set up this tactic of beating Hazel just to not act upon it? Help, maybe? Cool, so have Hazel and Oscar stop fighting long enough to talk about Gretchen, and then once they start up the combat again, cut away. Perfect. No one will be upset about that. But hey, at least we're focusing back on Weiss. 6.5 minutes into a 15-minute long episode, and she's effectively at the same state we left her at the end of the last one, except now Jean and Ren are sitting next to her.
No, it wasn't supposed to be like this. Please.
Miles sounds way more upset than Jean looks. RWBY's expressions are usually stellar, so it's weird that, despite the fact he's the only thing on screen, they didn't really land the animation here. This isn't done well. Cutting away right as she takes her breath undermines the situation, implying it's not worth lingering on. The aggressive amount of cliffhangers this volume doesn't just blueballs you for a week, they also prevent any situation from having a climax. Initiation, follow-through, climax, resolution. The pacing of these episodes means half the necessary story beats gets cut. Let's look at some examples. Initiation, Blake reveals she's a Faunus. Follow-through, she runs away and plans to fight the White Fang as her friends try to look for her. Climax, Torchwick and the White Fang are fought, with RWBY and Penny showing up to help. Resolution, Weiss apologizes and Blake agrees to rely on her team, knowing she can trust them. Even though this really only takes an episode to complete, each part of the arc is given plenty of time and leads to a satisfying conclusion. One where we can all understand how the characters got there. Now let's look at another one. Initiation, Weiss gets stabbed. Follow-through, Ren and Jean sit next to her, worrying. Climax, Jean's semblance heals her. Resolution, she starts fighting again. Both of these initiation examples were introduced at the end of their respective episodes. Except for Blake, her arc was the entire focus of the following episode. Here, the episode is too busy explaining backstory and setting up for the next big cliffhanger. The follow-through for Weiss's stabbing is 42 seconds long, spread across 6 minutes of other plot and character points. They cut away to an elevator ride halfway through the climax, diminishing its importance and breaking the arc's pacing. And then there's no real resolution. Weiss just starts fighting again, and Jean is pushed out of the focus. This not only makes her near-death experience feel like it was overhyped, she only changes from it by getting a stain on her dress, but also makes the reveal of Jean's semblance feel arbitrary. They only linger on it long enough to explain its mechanics. This is weird since they had bent over backwards to set all this up in the previous episode, just to consider it less important than Hazel yelling and Vernal gawking at a big tree. This scene is really unnecessary. You cut away from Weiss and Jean's big semblance healing moment to have Cinder tell us, "No one's seen the relics in a long time." That's not useful or relevant information in regards to anything happening during this event.
It's certainly grander than Beacon's.
I thought you didn't have the relic. How do you know how grand Beacon's vault was if you couldn't find it? Or did you just look at it and wasn't able to open the door? Is she considering this hallway the vault? What is the fucking point of this line? Everything that happens down in the vault takes so fucking long, too. I appreciate the juxtaposition between the frantic upstairs battle and the serene vault, but they really take their time down here. Having the characters talk and move real damn slow. Back on the barbiturates, I guess, to squeeze as much screen time out of the lavishly made set as they can. I should take a moment to mention that it is a very pretty set. It's big and grandiose and the colors are vibrant, making it feel special and magic. The effects on the falling petals is nice. It's the best looking set of the volume, which unfortunately emphasizes how boring the flat brown auditorium the others are stuck in is. But that aside, good job on the vault. Oh my gosh! We actually get to see a fight? Really? One where everyone's really trying? It's not mind-blowing by any means, but we are actually getting to see some action that doesn't feel heavily one-sided, which is fun. And it features one of the two cool action sequences of the volume, so that's nice. Why does Jean look so dumb here?
Weiss! What happened? What's going on?
She screamed, dude. I guess Ruby's deaf. It looks like Ty was right.
Well, I guess you lost some brain cells along with that arm.
Yang suddenly is so incompetent that she can't beat Mercury, despite her previous victory against him, and she has to stop and gawk at Emerald's image of Raven. What, it's impossible to focus on more than one thing now? Seeing your mom forces you to just stand around and look at her? Oh no, Yang's in trouble! What about Oscar? This is a perfect showcase of this episode's horrid pacing. After we're done watching Ozpin fight Hazel, which we just cut away from in the middle of the fight, this happens. Weiss is breathing weird, Jean's confused, Ruby's awake and also confused, Ren says Weiss is okay, Yang struggles to fight, Ruby watches the others fight, looks like Crow's blasting off again. All of that happens in the span of 60 seconds. They introduce new stuff and continue old stuff and drop stuff willy-nilly. We never got to focus on Weiss's health and Jean's semblance. Ren just tells us she'll be okay. Ruby shifts our focus to Yang struggling, but then just ignores that to go back to Oz and Hazel's fight. This unfocused structure makes everything feel rushed and unimportant, since we're constantly cutting away.
Whatever you're doing, don't stop.
Like, why did you remove his hands? What if he needs to be making contact? Did you just want a good look at Weiss's new scar? Yay! Nora's finally gotten off her ass and is doing something! Why'd she insist on just sitting next to Ruby anyway? No one was focused on her. It's not like he had to guard her from the villains who are too busy fighting Oscar and Yang. Ruby's been such a non-element in this that I forgot she was even here. Whoops! You've accidentally written your title character out of the plot again.
No. I'm angry.
My least favorite thing of this entire volume is Ruby's edgy dialogue in these episodes. No, I'm angry. Fuck you, this is trite and laughable. This sounds like the shit a middle schooler would have their Mary Sue protagonist say, and forcing Ruby to hold Crescent Rose in such an awkward looking position doesn't help. I get that they're trying to reference this, but it's not working. I don't know why she looks so much more stiff and unnatural here, but she does. I should probably mention how annoying it is that Emerald and Mercury just stopped to let Ruby pose, but at this point I'm starting to sound redundant. I'm not even surprised we cut away from the fight. I've come to expect it in RWBY. I wonder how Raven and Vernal plan to bullshit their way out of this one. Maybe Raven was just hoping she could kill Cinder and leave. I like the big build-up to the door opening. It's exciting to get to see what's in there, and it's really good to linger on the moments beforehand to build up the tension. But they do really take their time. I just wish the scene was a little faster. Less superfluous dialogue, have Vernal move a little quicker. You don't want the audience to get bored when you're trying to build tension. And you've left us antsy by not letting us see most of the fight so far. We're going to lose our patience easier since we want to get back to the combat.
They say you're a cunning leader, that you're strong, that you're clever. It's a shame that they're wrong.
I've seen Goombas with less obviously telegraphed attacks. You can tell Raven's a bad guy because she just waits around for Cinder to finish talking like how they always do. Cinder's grim arm is so cool. I mean, we all kinda figured she was hiding something under that huge-ass sleeve, but still, it can stretch and it has claws. It's a fun addition to her repertoire, and Raven's explanation that it's not protected by aura means Cinder not only needs to fight smart to keep it protected, but since it's a weak point, others need to fight smart to try to target it. At least, in theory, that's how it should go. Raven never once tries to target Cinder's arm during their fight, even when she's pinned by it. Maybe Cinder's semblance is that she makes people forget they can try to escape her loose grasp.
What is this? Where's the power?
So, did Cinder forget that's not how the maiden powers work? Or did the writers? It's not just kill the maiden to get her power, you have to be the last one in her thoughts when she dies. Vernal could have easily just thought of Raven as she kicked the bucket. With how close Raven and Vernal seem to be, it's not unreasonable to assume the two might have made a plan like that at some point. Vernal, if I get attacked, I'll think of you so you get the powers. Cinder's insistence that all she needs to do is kill a maiden to get her powers feels amazingly short-sighted. This is a great twist! They tricked me by putting Vernal in the opening opposite Cinder. I never expected them to lie about this, and I totally fell for it. And this revelation makes Raven way more important. She's no longer just Yang's mom, she's a key figure in all of this Salem relic malarkey. Making her the maiden gives her relevance to the plot, and that's great. And so, that was Vault of the Spring Maiden. This episode is so unfocused it feels like I took my glasses off to watch it. Every couple of seconds we're cutting to a new event or a different encounter, often just to cut to conversations while other characters fight. Half the time the characters are frantic with a lot to focus on, the other half the characters seem casual about their situation, and that's not even including the downright leisurely pace of the girls in the vault. And worst of all, this whole episode is completely useless. The important elements are Jean's semblance healed Weiss, Hazel goes berserk about Oz, Raven's the maiden. Most of the episode is just the characters sitting around, or looking around, or walking around. There's a little bit of action, which is nice, but there are no stakes in it. I'm not worried Ozpin and by proxy Oscar will die again. Half the cast is so unnecessary to the encounter that I forget they're even there. Yang, Ruby, Nora, Leo, Emerald, and Mercury are off-screen so often that they might as well not be here. The big story thread that they set up in the last episode's cliffhanger was shoved aside to instead have a bunch of time in the vault building up to this episode's cliffhanger. Most of the screen time is dedicated to an elevator ride and looking at a tree. It's like all they care about are these last-second stingers, and so spend the whole episode leading into them. And yeah, this was an exciting note to leave us on, but you don't need to fish for reasons for us to come back each week. We're already invested in the show. You don't need to convince us it's worth coming back by ending each episode with a "what'll happen next" cliffhanger. This episode could have been easily put into another one. Cut out all the unnecessary fluff of characters looking around or moving real slow from the episode, remove all the setting up fights and trim down Jean's woe is me dialogue from the last one, and stick them together. It'd mean the loss of the will Weiss be okay cliffhanger, but it's such a rushed plot point anyway that wouldn't matter. It would be a still unfocused but engaging episode, not only introducing the fight in the auditorium, but also allowing the characters to actually fight while also progressing the plot in the vault. But that'd really only just be a band-aid over the larger problem. The episode is bloated with a lot of chatter, setting up problems, or refusing to act upon them until enough of the episode has progressed. As always, I wish they had filled that runtime with exciting fights or character progression instead, but I guess you gotta save that budget for the next episode. Again. This episode's certainly not the worst, but it is pretty dull, with the most exciting moment happening in the last minutes of it. Again. RT's refusal to let anything progress before the finale of the episode or volume has resulted in an episode where big character moments are glazed over, character backstories take too long to establish, and we spend a lot of time looking at a vault leading up to another cliffhanger.
Don't fuck with me! I have the power of God and anime on my side!
Wait,